What's up, everyone, and welcome. This is the story of Twain, a female whale. The sound I just played was actually Twain, the whale, responding to a research vessel off the coast of, I think it was Canada. I've heard a few different versions or recounts of this story, of this research adventure from, I think it was Azra Raskin, and this is my interpretation of the one that was most intriguing and actually led me down to finding out more about how whales speak. For this image, I used Midjourney to try to give Twain, our female whale main character here, a bit of a persona. So I really like this version because I asked Midjourney to give it a little bit of street smarts and kind of mafia feel to it, as you can see by the goons in the back and the red flowing dress with the the mafia style hat. I think that Twain actually has a inquisitive, at least, or sort of a street smarts type of persona because of just the way that this scenario actually played out. Imagine how your reaction would be if tomorrow you turned on your TV or you went on YouTube or some platform and you saw a deep fake of yourself saying it was you, saying things that you know you did not say. How would you react when you think about the story that I'm about to tell? Now, I actually hope this story inspires you to think about AI and maybe our planet a little bit different from now on. We're looking for aliens in outer space somewhere, but we don't even really understand the animals that we're living with, our cats, our dogs, our whales, right? So I think that projects like SETI and the Earth Species Project are extremely important research-wise, and if I can give it any little kind of jolt in voice through you as well, and if anybody can give it, of course, more resources to speed up the process, or even their knowledge to speed up the process, I think that is an amazing cause. Now, chances are your voice is louder than mine, especially in your own social circle. So if you really care about these topics and you think I did a good job, then, of course, share. So I think about it like a movie, because how else am I going to keep you guys' attention? So my movie is, set with handsome main character, debonair yet nerdy. Somehow he got interested in marine biology and whale sounds. Maybe, who knows, maybe he learned that actually in the 60s, somebody realized, some researcher figured out that these noises that for hundreds of years people might have thought as like witches and monsters under the sea, or just, sea moans, were in fact songs being sung by whales. And that inspired him to get into this research. We flash forward to them being on a research vessel off, I think it was the coast of Canada. And, they got all their equipment together. They have their protocols. They've got their licenses or permits or whatever you need to do whale research. And, setting up all their equipment. And they start lowering down assuming expensive microphone to pick up various decibel levels, up to 250 decibels, which is what whale noises can reach. And record them and try to decode them or match patterns or whatever on the ship, whatever their equipment is. And they're ready. And finally, a whale family, or a pod, shows up, and they start chattering with each other. So, bam, game on. They start recording, and they start using some kind of methodology to figure out which noises they want to play back. Who knows? Maybe they're flipping quarters, or they're spinning the bottle to see which number comes up, or they're playing rock paper scissors, or maybe they really have a process where they analyze the audio and see repeating patterns, or what's unique, or maybe what they've seen before, or maybe something they've heard one particular whale say before. However they do it, at the end of the day, they have a list of songs, a list of notes or sounds they want to play back next day. So you can imagine whatever the movie line is. It's all romantic, they're staring up at the sky in their sleeping bags on the deck. And next morning, after they had their instant coffee, I guess, or oatmeal or whatever they have on those research vessels, everybody's back at their stations, and they've now pulled up I guess they have the microphone still underneath there. They put down now a speaker, and they start playing the songs, or the noises. Now, I don't know what order they played them in. I don't know how many there were. All I know is that at one point they played this sound. Doesn't really sound like a booming concert speaker with bass and all that. It sounds like a speaker that's about to die underwater. But unbeknownst to them, they get a response. Not only do they get an audible response. They get a visual response. So you have your pod of whales clicking and clacking and talking and moaning and groaning and farting and whispering and whatever. And all of a sudden one breaks away and starts coming to the boat. And that's the one that made that noise. So, of course, maybe this has never happened before. Who knows where they were in terms of decoding and being able to research or figure out messages. Whatever it was, it seems as if they found a needle in a haystack. So they say, play it again, play it again. And they do. And this time, the whale comes even closer and responds. Now, the eagle-eyed guys out there who are actually looking at the screen right now would see that the first time the whale responded versus the second time was somewhat louder or more had more breath to it. Could be because the whale was closer. Could also be maybe it was trying to exert itself, right? Who knows? What I do know is that this back and forth, this sort of ping pong that was happened over the course of 20 minutes. Where the ship was sending out a message and the whale was batting it back. And I don't know the exact differences that they were doing, or were they just like always doing the same thing, kind of like sonar or geolocation, constant, or were they making modifications? I do recall either hearing or reading that one of the things that they did was change the amount of time between sending a message, right? So I don't know if it was the same noise or if it was a different noise, but they were sending messages or noises back and forth and even varying when it was played, kind of like a Morse code type thing, distance between signals. And the whale was mimicking it. So the whale had a cognitive understanding that they were playing a type of game, right? They were trying to find a common ground. So in and of itself, you could say, well, I mean, that's a really cool story. You could probably leave it at that and say, 20-minute talk with a whale, first time ever, wonderful, cool, what's next? But it got me thinking a couple of things. First, why whales? Like, why would whales be so important in terms of understanding? And second of all, how do whales talk? That was the first intriguing thing that I learned was how they talk. Right, so I mean, it's not a vocal cord; it's like a wind sac and some waxy liquid and projection off of the skull plate and producing sonar underwater that travels hundreds of miles. So, in terms of the intrigue of how whales speak or communicate and wanting to be able to understand it in greater detail, that's a pretty good place to start. But then it's also thinking back to the Africa video that I produced a couple weeks ago. If you remember, elephants also can speak at a sort of a low decimal, right? So, and that their communication, their audio communication can travel 10-kilometer radius. Well, whales have a breath. They have a range of up to 250 decibels, which coincidentally can rip our eardrums to shreds. So, I guess thank you, whales, for not tearing our eardrums to shreds. But just that massive range and increase in dynamics and complexity and variation, I think is an intriguing place to start. But it goes even further. So whales apparently share a number of social structures that humans use, with one caveat, an interesting caveat, but one caveat. So the males break away from the pod after some kind of like seasonal potential orgy, depending, I guess, the species, because there are multiple females in a pod and they mate. And then the male breaks off and leads a relatively solitary life or just hangs out with his buddies, with other males. Maybe he needs to get some well-needed rest from his yearly interaction. But you could also say that whales have a wham bam thank you ma'am type of relationship. But the social structure that's most interesting is what the ladies do in their social structure. They take over. In a structured group, they raise children together. In the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child, whales do that. Right? They have pod governance and politics. There's really a clear social structure in many, many ways. There's hierarchies, responsibilities. There are, I think it's called mariacal, and matriarchal, or meaning like a leader or a dominant feature, which is a female in the pod. And there are plenty of other kind of human social terms that can basically be layered over the social structure of a whale's. The easiest thing to correlate or to think about would be like a pod is the definition of their family. So they have family structure, they call it a pod. They have cooperation in hunting groups or raising children. Like I said, multiple females raise the same child. It takes a village type style. They have culture. They pass behavior and songs down to new generations. So alone on the structural level, to see how evolution or emergence has happened within that environment versus humans is, for me, a fascinating point. But another reason is whales' brains are massive. We talk about these large language models, and the bigger the model, the more these things emerge, right? These capabilities that we didn't necessarily understand or understand where they're coming from happen to emerge from the bottom up, as emergence would come up from in complex systems. And thinking about a whale's brain at 20 pounds, like 5 times the mass of a human's brain, how many more potential neurons, how many more potential connections could it have? And then what happens when you connect it to AI, right? Who's controlling who? Type of what if scenario, right? But that large brain could really give us some insight to see the scalability and how the structures change within the neuronal processes to understand, well, again, their language, and as well as something that may have a larger capacity than our brains do. And then you have the noises, their vocabulary. So the noises often consist of like things like clicks and whistles and moans and other sounds like farts and burps, and coincidentally, whales can't fart, but they can also sing. So the songs that were discovered to be coming from whales, I think it was like 1967 or so, were songs that over a long duration of repeating over a session and have all different types of complex structures hidden within them, are coming from whales. But then you get into the language, okay? And how do they talk? Like, how do they produce the language, right? When you look at their communication, at least the audible communication, you see complex structures. Again, the beeps, the clicks, the moans, the farts, the burps. Whale sounds have really not been studied that long. The story about the 60s is true. I think it was Roger Payne was the researcher who discovered that these were songs. And it's really just been going on since then, so you don't have that long of a time period to really be able to dissect it and understand it, although the technologies we now have are definitely, I think, ripe for being able to tackle this. But the sounds are generally broken down into 2 general groups. One is geolocation, and the other is conversation. Not all whale language is the same. So whale language varies from pod, or again family, from pod to pod, as well as region to region. Or country to country. You might be able to simplify it or kind of put it on a level of like dialects within a country, different areas, or even different languages across countries. Now, in terms of the 2 types of vocalization, the first one is a constant because it's like a geolocation and it's always being emitted. So if you have to dive down 2 kilometers to find food or maybe to fart, then you have no light. There's no flashlight. So how do you know if you're gonna potentially fart and run into a wall, or fart and scare away a giant squid that's your favorite meal? So you're sending out sonar pulses, and you're getting the responses, and you're being able to orientate where you are, and where prey is, where predators are. Where any kind of danger is. So you then go down into and you filter out the geolocation part, and you're left with just the conversation part. So once you have the conversation part, then it gets even more interesting, because the patterns that you're looking at, and this is just any old song, you're basically looking at not just the noise that you're interested in. You're looking at the surrounding noise. You're looking at the circumstances. Why is the noise coming? Why is the noise this loud right now? So the surroundings take a role, or play a role within determining this. But I wanted to see what we knew about whale songs, and I found some really interesting information. This is essentially the breakdown of how whale songs work. The top part. So in the top part and bottom part is, of course, our scale of music. So the top part is what you call a song session, that long line. That's like a jam session. If you had a college band and you kind of disbanded, but you guys still play on the weekends, that session that you do on the weekends, each session you do on the weekends is the session here. Then you have the song. The song is repeated multiple times within the session. Then you have a theme of the session and the song that's a repeating, reoccurring event. Then you have phrases. And then you have subphrases, and then you have units. And units are this like backslash dash underscore collection of ticks and tacks that, if I understood it correctly, they in themselves can vary, even in just tone or volume, which could potentially change meaning. So you have these complex unit structures that come together to form that come together within subphrases, within phrases, within themes, songs, and then sessions to produce an extremely complex methodology of sound. But to me, I wanted to go back to the two sounds that the whale made and play them again. That's the one on the left. That's the one on the right. So here, again, we don't know. I don't know why it was louder. It could be louder because the whale was closer. It could also be louder because of the fact that the whale was like getting upset. And when you take into account what transpired, the boat was sending out a message that was saying, "I am Twain." The whale was saying, "No, I'm Twain." The boat was saying it again, "I am Twain." The whale was saying, "No, I'm Twain." And this went back and forth for 20 minutes. But at a certain point, you could say, well, why didn't the whale's self-preservation mechanism step in and it like try to destroy the boat and say, "No, man, I'm Twain. You're not going to steal my identity, this deep fake." It didn't do that. It was intrigued. It played a game of ping pong, trying to bridge the gap of communication. So even Twain in itself as a whale, as an individual whale, would be an extremely interesting whale to tail. So how does the whale actually communicate? How does it produce this sonar? I don't want to get too deep in it. It definitely involves a waxy liquid in the top cone that's facing the back of the whale, which coincidentally is one of the reasons why this species almost went extinct, because humans were killing the whales to get the waxy liquid to use for like candles or I don't know, like oil burning lamps. So we were destroying these animals, bringing them to the brink of extinction, so that we could get their essentially like earwax or brain wax to light candles or to create candles. So then it bounces off into the bottom, what they call the junk, but which is like a projector of the sound out into the water. Any greater detail, I'll probably have to do another video about it and get even deeper myself in terms of the transmission from the brain, the neurons through to this waxy liquid. But what really interested me when I saw this particular image as I was doing research was how they are portraying the different data types, right? So the echolocation, yeah, we know that's for geolocation, knowing where they are, knowing where their food is. We can kind of sort of filter that out. And if you look at the codas there, first thing that jumped out to me about the codas was really DNA sequencing. So I was researching like how can you use DNA sequencing processes and knowledge to help decode whale language. And coincidentally, there are a number of papers about that, so other people are thinking the same thing. And that got me to give myself sort of another challenge. And the other challenge was, let's say I am a linguist or a project manager or, just somebody who's not really a developer. How can I have a crazy idea like trying to see whether or not you could do DNA sequencing processing on whale data, whale audio data, to try to help decode or understand, maybe from a linguistics perspective or a psychological perspective. These people aren't developers. How can you go from that crazy idea to actually validating or disproving in the quickest period of time possible? And I did it. I gave myself the challenge, and I used the tool that I built, or the platform I built, smarttask.cloud, and literally within like 15 minutes I had my first version of a real sort of whale whisperer that understands whale audio research, understands APIs to get information. And then I connected it to two different systems, two different API-based systems. One was called Freesound, where I could do searches for sound files and then potentially do analysis on sound files. So not just whales, like also cats, dogs, and just hobbyists that were making recordings of different sounds. And then I connected it to Google Search for real-time search using the Google Search JSON API. And that gave me a pretty robust ability to do real-time research using Google for other terminology or other potential clarifications of questions that I may be asking the chatbot. And then the ability to do research on particular files, as well as research on data that I just like copy and paste right into the chatbot, which you can see up here towards the top. Up here, all these little numbers. This is a NumPy that I pasted in there from the actual sound that Twain made back to the boat, the first one. I converted it into NumPy, took a little brief snippet of it out and pasted it in here and asked it to do low-level statistical analysis. So it gave me like the mean and all of that. Then I asked it to do tonal analysis. And being able to get up and running in such a short period of time with very basic information, a little copy and paste here and there, in order to be able to sort of validate if, let's say, you're a linguist or, a psychologist or, social studies, and you don't have the technical capability to write a chat front end or, produce this type of thing, if it's really just configuring it and setting it up and then being able to work with real data and connect it to AI in such a short period of time, this could really be, smarttask.cloud could be a very good tool for you. If you're trying to look at, scaling these types of things or, having a more holistic plan for integrating all of your AI, then I could never recommend at this point any company that's better than the one I currently work for, which is a TerraTech. And I actually think they just won sort of best company to work with for 2024. Because of just the sheer passion, the knowledge that exists within the over 500 employees, so many PhDs in physics and topics that are at the core of efficiency, of reliability. It's just an amazing company to work for. I'm very proud to work there, and hope that we could do some work together with the Earth Species Project or SETI in terms of helping them and helping other organizations get to the validation of their ideas and move faster, come up with more ingenious ways of maybe getting to the endpoint faster by potentially using dolphins. So I started to think, okay, well, the sonar, yeah, right? So that's the communication level, but there are other animals that also use sonar, and the first thing that popped in my mind was dolphins. We have a really good communication relationship with dolphins, and even to a degree, killer whales. They click, they use sonar, they have similar language patterns to whales. So if dolphins can understand whales, which, they have a symbiotic relationship. They live together because the dolphins show the whales where the food is, and the size of the whales protects the dolphin from predators, so they can live in a symbiotic relationship. So if they can live in a symbiotic relationship and they both click and they both fart and they both, use sonar, then they could probably have a conversation with each other. And considering the fact that we have been able to transmit in terms of concepts and knowledge and communication to dolphins, it's pretty unbelievable. So we have trained a dolphin to go down under the water, to remember all of the tricks it's ever done before. It's a massive memory capacity there. And then come up with a new one. And then not just come up with a new one and come up and tell us, this is what I would do as my new trick, but to actually do it. So it's the cognitive understanding of what we're requesting them to do, the ability to have that kind of memory and have that kind of understanding of what they haven't done as a trick and what they could do as a trick, and then being able to transfer that idea, that concept, into immediate muscle memory use to be able to come back up on the water and do it, even if it's only 20 minutes later or 30 minutes later. You're just sitting there waiting as a human, but this animal can turn that cognitive understanding into real action, muscle memory that they can do right away. Humans can't really do that. And to make it even more complex, they trained 2 dolphins to do that thing, but in tandem. So both dolphins go down. Dolphin 1 knows what Dolphin 1 has done is all the tricks in their life, and what they haven't done. Dolphin 2 knows what Dolphin 2 has not done. They now need to confer with each other to see what they have not done individually or together as a pair in sync. They come up with a new trick. They come up and they do it in sync in real time. So it's cognitive understanding, it's group understanding, it's comparing notes, it's coming up with new ideas, and it's transferring that new idea into something you do in real time, like Matrix style, right? So if we could break down the communication barriers between us and dolphins, and have dolphins be the translator to whale, and not lose anything in context, we could potentially speed up the process of being able to communicate with whales and learn what they know. But now, before I let you go, I wanted to talk a little bit about bias, because, believe it or not, bias is a feature. It's not a bug. Trying to solve bias in AI models the way they are trained right now is ridiculous. AI models are trained using human understanding, human language, human stories. So humans play a huge role in its understanding and interpretation and way of doing things, which is a bias. It's biased towards our perspective. So this picture actually was side by side in Midjourney with the previous picture that you saw, where I asked it to give me a mafia-style whale in a red flowing dress, and a rapper dolphin gave me more like a train conductor with bling, but so I'll let that slide for now. But the whale isn't even at the table. The whale isn't in charge here. The whale is in the water. Now, some of you keen-eyed geniuses may see that this woman's hand has been cut off. So, I mean, that's another way to think about this picture. The whale is in the water and still managed to somehow hack off a human being's hand with her arm stuck down towards the side there, which is, a reality I also don't want to see. But, just in terms of the bias that exists within these models and exists within the way that we deal with things, I think could go through a drastic change once animals really have a seat at the table, or we are able to communicate with them and make it more personalized, to see that we almost wiped out a species to get their brain wax for making candles, and that brain wax was a key element for their communication. So how many memories, how many stories were destroyed by just obliterating a species to get this whale wax, right? So, and then finally, before I let you go, still working on my little pet project here of the more inclusive what-if type stories. What would happen when we really could communicate at a cognitive level with more of these species through the use of AI? What role does AI take over the long term? What emerges with AI? What do we learn about the atrocities that we have done to our poor cats by petting them when we want to pet them and not petting them when they want to be petted? Or that worm you stepped on? What are the ramifications in a world where AI plays a more central role in the communication and sort of governance of how we interact with each other? It's a play on reality, but I think it opens up some interesting questions that could lead us down some very interesting paths together. And I hope you join me for it. So until next time, I'll say take care.